Hello, the plan for today is to align the burrs in my Vario. I've got a Marconi Vario, but this procedure is the same for a Baratza. First things first, we want to make sure we've unplugged the grinder and had it unplugged for a couple of minutes. It can store a little bit of charge inside, so if you unplug it and touch the insides too quickly, it can give you a little bite. Let's avoid that. To do this, we're going to need at least a Phillips head screwdriver, maybe some Allen keys. The Baratza version has some socket heads in them, and you're also going to want a whiteboard marker for testing the alignment. Start by taking it apart. Caps off the back screws. Just rubber plugs that pull out. Okay. Now, with the screws loose, the back should just be off. Before we go too much further, make sure you've taken the portafilter holder out, otherwise it can fall and dent things. So, next, we need to unplug some cables, motor, and there are two thin cables for control and switch for up the top chamber. Just try and grab them by the plastic connector itself and wiggle and pull, not by the cable. Now we need to remove the top section. Two screws. Two screws at the back. Now, these are little star washers on them that I'm trying not to lose. Now, top comes away from the base. We can set that aside. Okay. Best to take the hopper off as well. And maybe tip out any grinds that are sitting in there. Okay. Let's remove the upper housing. Start by removing the handles. We just pull straight out. Maybe a little firmer for you. Mine have come out a few times already and are now quite loose. If you've got the fort style handles, they need to be unscrewed from behind the front screen. There are other guides online on how to do that. Now to remove the top housing, we need to unscrew the four outsidemost screws. most screws removed, the chamber can just pull away from the top housing. And now it won't stay up. Now with the chamber out, the first thing we should do is test the current alignment to be certain of where we're starting from. Okay, we're going to need to clean these grinds out before we can do an alignment check, otherwise they will confuse the results. Sometimes it helps to bring in the big guns. Now what we're actually testing here are the little flat sections around the outside, mostly triangular flat sections. We want to check how closely the flatness of them meets up with the same triangular flats on the other burr. So with whiteboard marker, just draw onto the triangular sections. It's probably worth double checking that your whiteboard marker does say it's non-toxic. Most of them are, but we'll usually run some throwaway beams through first anyway to clean off any leftover bits of texture. Don't need to be too perfect. Start with the levers down. Check the burr is down. Screw it back up tight. Now we can just turn by hand. While slowly moving the levers up till they just touch, you can hear it change. Well, it stops moving altogether. Just starting to scrape a little bit here. And back down. Push the burr down. Unscrew the top. And there we go. You can see on a clean wiped off from there. So look, we're about 2/3. It's not bad as a starting point, but we want to make sure it gets clean all the way around. Because right now, when the burrs are touching on this side, it means there's a slight gap over this side. So the grinds that come out this side will be slightly bigger the ones that come out that side, and that's what we want to correct for. Now if you've upgraded the top chamber yourself to the metal fork one from the original older plastic one, you will have had to have replaced the M3 bolts yourself. And many of the ones that you find at a local store will be this button head style. It's a fairly small head with the equally small gripping washers. Now, what you may find is that head is a bit too small and rounded compared to the size of the hole in the plastic chassis. The first time I tried this, after I'd got it initially aligned, only within a couple of days of using it during a grind, I had the machine go clunk and the quality went down. And I found afterwards that this rounded button head had kind of slipped back into the hole a little bit on all four of them, and it had just fallen out of alignment. So ideally, you should try and get some pan head or flange head screws, which have this extra sort of flat section around the base, so it's a nice wide flat head on them, and even some larger star washers, so that they can really grip all the way around the mounting holes securely. So to perform this Burr alignment today, we want to move this top housing around so that and get it centrally aligned, such that this inner burr is flat to the upper burr at all times. So for the Alicorn alignment procedure, we need to start by just loosening the final 4 screws just a tiny bit, maybe sort of half a turn each. That's enough for the grind chamber to make it loose and be able to move side to side, around and around. That's the amount of movement needed to allow it to centrally align itself. Put the top burr back on, making sure the actual flat burr surfaces are clean, because they're the bits that we need to sit flat against each other. It's probably worth cleaning out again any remaining grinds, any loose grinds. For the Alicorn procedure, we want to just sit it upside down. Now inside, these levers move this little carrot and press down on this carrier. And just under that is the bottom of the drive shaft. So pressing down on this presses the drive shaft such that the burrs are now pushed down hard against each other. Sometimes I like to just hold that and give the motor a slight turn, just to make sure they're definitely smooth against each other. So while pressing down on just the metal part in the middle, not the plastic, we want to still bounce the lever a little bit. Be careful not to push it side to side. Any side to side movement loses everything we're trying to achieve here. So just very gently, straight down, bounce it a little bit, up, bounce, up, bounce, up. Now, again, while we're carefully not making any sideways movements, we need to gently screw it, tighten up the screws a little bit at a time. Once they're just starting to bite, carefully move a little bit to get better purchase. I'm going to go a little bit at a time just to not bump the alignment of the chamber to the platform. So let's just test how that went. Burr down. And let's paint it up. Now if you've got ceramic burrs, the whiteboard marker can be very hard to see, so you may have better luck with a chalk pen. They often sold for drawing on glass and windows. So not a paint pen, but an actual chalk pen can work quite well on the ceramic burrs. The scrape. It's quite a clear scrape. Back down again. This is interesting. It's not a great thing, but you can see it's a bit more blue here around the screw. That means I'm getting what's, they call it tarcoing. So that means that burr is a little bit too screwed down and it's flexing the burr slightly. So I need to reseat that burr. Loosen that off just the tiniest fraction. Okay, let's try that again. Well, it's certainly not perfect, but that's really quite close. So this last little section with some blue, still got some streaks through it, so it's pretty well aligned. It's just not quite perfect. So at this point, you could say, that's fine, that's good enough, it's a lot better than it was, and you're probably going to get more consistent coffee for it. Or you can try going through the alignment procedure again and see if it works out better the next time. That's relatively tight. A little bit more. Yeah, let's test the alignment again. Burrs down. And there we have it. A nice clean wipe. That's what we're looking for here. And that means that this chamber has now been successfully aligned. The flat surfaces of both burrs are flat to each other to a very high tolerance, and therefore the beam that we ground out will be ground to a much more consistent size. So at this point, we can put the burr back on. Give these screws one more little twitch just to make sure they're nice and tight. We don't want the chamber to slip back out of place during use. Reassembly. Don't forget the rubber gasket. Try again. I find it helps to plug in some of those cables as you go, or you can sort of get to them a bit better. You know, my motor's a lot smaller than yours. It's likely as that to replace one I have to find myself. And don't forget the ground cable. There we have it. Burr aligned Marconi Vario, or Bratz Vario, ready for enjoying better coffee. Good luck.